Intending to be absent? Okay. Okay, so regular meeting June the 26th, 2017. First item is the adoption of the agenda. Do note there are some replacement pages for the Sophie report due to an error on the elected officials' expenses. So we need a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Kolkoff, seconded by Councillor Giselbrecht. Discussion. Councillor Giselbrecht?
Yes, I'd like to add a late item under new business.
There's the opportunity to add late items in part 15 of the agenda.
That's correct.
Okay, so when we get to that point, you can introduce it and we'll go to a vote of council.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? None. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Any declaration of conflict? First item, just with regards to the public, the annual municipal report. So in the agenda, pages 45 to 111 is the annual municipal report, and this is the opportunity for the public to ask questions or confirmations or any other inquiries with respect to the report as presented. So I'll turn it to the public first, and if you could state your name and address for the minute taker. Call for a second time. Item 4A, just the annual municipal report, the opportunity for the public to provide submissions separate from the regular input periods. Okay, and our final time. Hearing none, we'll move on to the public input period itself. 2 minutes, name and address for the record, and do note you cannot provide comment with regards to a public hearing topic or an item subject to a public hearing, which includes at this point District Lantzville zoning bylaw number 60, amendment bylaw number 60.35. So any topics other than that. Name and address for the record, sir.
Mike Pierce, 7032 Midland Road, here in Lantzville. I'm speaking here tonight so I can express my opinion and dismay regarding the push for the type of development that's suggested by the recent survey's questions and its potential impact on the new revised OCP. As a longtime villager of 42 years, I've grown up, built a house, raised a family here. I stayed here for this long because of the quiet wooded lots, farms, larger acreage, quiet roads, great place to live in a semi-rural environment with lower taxes. I really like the spirit of the 2005 OCP as it reflects the values I just mentioned. These attributes have become even more valued in recent years as Lantzville becomes surrounded by approaching the 9-mile type development. The tiny lot subdivisions of our immediate area and pretty much everywhere else in suburban North America, come to think of it, is not a development style that would embrace the special values and uniqueness of our community. The recent survey seeks to promote high density in general, and specifically in the 2 undeveloped Winds and Owen Road areas, and not consider the 2005 OCP of half-acre developments. Higher density housing has to increase the amount of cars on the road, noise, lack of privacy, pavement, and taxation. I suppose higher density with these attributes is valued by some, but not by me, nor I suspect a lot of other last villagers. I hope in this regard that Council acknowledge what is special about our town and seek to represent majority interests and do so. They recognize the spirit of the 2005 OCP and the uniqueness of Lantzville by maintaining the larger lot size. To consider and to represent the interests of the citizens who actually live here.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Just for clarification, with regards to the public input period, it typically relates to items that are on the agenda. Is there a specific item on the agenda that your comments relate to?
Coming up on today's agenda?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm wanting to encourage that we give the OCP committee and citizens of this community time to reflect on the latest survey and any resulting water study results that are imminent, I understand.
Okay, now.
Oh, okay. The motion regarding OCP? Okay. Okay, and your 2 minutes are almost up, so
Represent the interests of citizens who actually live here when considering additional density. The current drive for additional development would seem to embrace outside developers to increase density or develop and ignoring long-term rental property owners in other areas of the village that would like to develop. Personally, I have a property in which I paid taxes on for the last 30 years and could theoretically put 4 lots on it if I had the water to do so. I'm not saying I would going to do that, but I would like that opportunity at first. I'm not saying no to development. I also acknowledge the majority of citizens desire higher density standard development, and so be it. What I'm saying is I don't believe all Lantzville wants is to fight with road development height. I ask council to consider, do we want to screw up with the uniqueness of our town just so we can be like everyone else? Is that the legacy we will give up? That is a threat I see where the current focus is taking us. I would urge council to carefully consider and act on future OCP committee's recommendations, not least of which would be an extended period of time for this group to advise and the residents to consider the proposed densities along with the yet to be revealed water management plan. Due diligence through due process. Really, what's the rush? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor.
Mr. Pierce, could I ask you a question?
Just for clarification.
Or just for my own curiosity, how did you and your friends find the OCP survey to complete?
Answering it itself, confusing for the most part. Lots of bonus densities. Had to figure that out. Very unclear about farm clusters, what that all entails, exactly what, Anyhow, I found it inflammatory for the most part. It wasn't what I was expecting. Neither were the people I've been talking to. Not happy about it.
Thank you. Any additional public input? Hearing none, moving on to the approval of the minutes of the June 12, 2017 regular council meeting minutes as presented. Moved by Councillor Neary, seconded by Councillor Gilbert. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Any business arising from the minutes? Hearing none, going on to bylaws. Bylaw number 60.35, amendment bylaw number 60.35, 2017. This was an item brought forward from the previous meeting where we had the public hearing in relation to it. Councillor Gilbert.
I so move the bylaw number 60.35 as set out in our agenda.
That's for third reading. We have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Colclough. Discussion. Councillor Gilbert.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm just turning to Mr. We had a petition presented last time, and I want to thank Mr. Blood for putting that forward. Thank Mr. Blood for bringing that petition. And I've read that, and I've read the letter of Mr. Dryberg dated June 12, 2017. I'm looking at Mr. Dryberg's letter at page 18, and his first objection was with increased traffic volume and noise. Unfortunately, there's no evidence supporting this allegation. I'm a long-time resident of Lantzville. I do go down Collette Road, I have to admit. There's some beautiful gardens along the way, some very nice houses. Sometimes we're looking to see if anything's for sale, but I've never encountered a lot of traffic unless it was either a parade on the main street. So in the absence of empirical evidence that traffic will increase, although I accept Mr. Dryberg's allegations and I look at the rest of the letter, I'm voting in favor of this development. And the reason I'm voting is that we've spent, the previous council spent a lot of time coming up with a village core plan. And I believe that this redevelopment of this particular corner will be a starting point, if not a cornerstone, for redeveloping the area along Lantzville Road, the downtown section. And I believe it's a positive thing for our community.
Okay, additional discussion. Councilor Swain?
Yeah, through the chair, I'm having difficulty with this zoning bylaw request. The number one difficulty I'm having is with the number of units or dwelling units. I'm saying it's subject to the site requirements. Now, in looking at this, there could be potentially, 10 units or residential units put on that property. I'm trying to listen carefully to the residents in that area, and I don't know if that's necessarily in the spirit of that neighborhood, having that many residential units or dwellings popping up in that commercial property. I've gone back and I've looked at the commercial 1 zoning. It looks like pretty much everything on this in this zoning request has been increased. So even the parcel coverage, typically 40% has been increased to 50%. Floor area ratio is increased from 0.4 to 0.5. Even that, the height of the dwelling has been increased by half a meter. Looks like everything is being relaxed on it, but again, the main concern I have about this is the number of dwellings. It's not defined, and I'm really nervous about voting in favor of this because it's setting the precedent for future commercial rezoning requests. There appears to be a desire to increase the density in our village core. However, I don't know if we want to be increasing the density this much with every single commercial property that we have in the village core.
Councilor Hain?
Well, I support business in the core, and I believe we should do what we can to ensure its sustainability, while at the same time ensuring the business community and the residential communities coexist in a manner where each is respectful of each other for their quality of life and their property values and what they bring to the community. So I believe we have to find a way to cohabitate. The issues I see with the proposed CM8 zoning is that there's no certainty or specificity to protect the established neighborhood or its residents. The opportunity to coexist has been skewed to the benefit of the commercial property owner at the expense of the neighboring community. The concerns just raised by Councillor Swain are the same ones I have. Everything is more. I did not see in the village core plan proposed, and maybe I missed it from the previous council, where it was all more. It was not to go from CM1 to CM8. So that seems to be a new development for me. I don't remember seeing that. So I have some concerns with that there really hasn't been a community discussion around that component. When you read the permitted uses on page 16, they can do almost anything. There's no certainty as what will happen on that property. And people need certainty in their lives, and I think it's only fair to expect. I also wonder why we have to sacrifice the residents' quality of life. We can find a way to make this property owner successful while also maintaining the integrity of that community. One presenter at the last meeting stated that residents' concerns can be dealt with through a development permit process. Really? I don't see how that's going to happen. When residents will not be allowed to be told when a development application comes in, and case in point is the foothills, residents are not allowed to know what's going on until it's a done deal. So there's no certainty and there's no protection for them. And that to me is not right. They've been here the longest, they pay the most taxes, and they've had the most to do with the community. I, like the residents, lack confidence that the concerns will be listened to in the future based on the events that have happened. So that's why I have concerns. What I believe should happen is I think this application should go back to staff to work with the property owner to provide more specificity as to what the types and the number of activities that will occur on this property. That way, again, we can move forward and coexist in a good arrangement.
Councillor Koltoff.
My question through you to staff, to Mr. Lim Shu. Mr. Lynch, it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that what the zoning sets out is, for example, the maximum number of dwelling units. It also spells out maximum floor areas, et cetera, but you can't go through that list and say you could put all of those things on the property. Is that correct?
That's correct. At the end of the day, it depends on the uses that the applicant wants to put on the property. So you can certainly mix and match the various permitted uses that's on the list under the proposed commercial aid zone. So it could be residential with office use, with convenience store or retail store, depending on what they want. Now, in terms of limiting what can go on that property, it depends on them meeting the bylaw requirements, such as parking, for example. So each use has a specific parking requirement, and certainly that will eat up a number of the land base, and certainly that will help to regulate the use. Lot coverage, again, is covered off under the zoning, so the most they can cover in terms of building on the site is 50%, as well as there's a maximum height requirement, so no more than 2 stories. The additional height allows for some articulation in roof lines from a design perspective, but the intent is not to go from 2 stories to 3 stories, as an example. It's still going to be a 2-story building, and everything's said and done.
So to summarize that, if you look at the bylaw, if you look at the zoning, you're allowed this much residential or this much commercial or some combination of the two.
That's
so for
correct.
example, if you're putting in some commercial, then you're not going to get 10 residential.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, my experience with these is that it's actually very difficult to get anywhere close to maximizing out the development on the site particularly because of parking. You just don't have the land mass there to do it. The second question is, can you just outline what the development permit process will be when the time comes?
When the time comes, the applicant will be required to put forward a set of detailed drawings regarding building elevations. So basically providing plans that shows us what the building is going to look like from all sides. It'll include landscaping, it'll include parking layout for the site. And the parking will have to meet the parking bylaw requirements under the existing zoning. That development permit application is assuming that there are no variances in the bylaw will come to council for review and consideration. If there is a variance required, such that, for example, if they are shy of parking spot they need to go through to obtain a variance for that. Similarly, if they need relaxation on setback for whatever reason, again, that variance would come before council for consideration.
One last follow-up question there. Is there any either statutory or required or opportunity to require a public information meeting at that time?
Yeah, if the applicant requires a variance of some sort, our standard practice has been to send notices out to adjacent property owners to inform them that there is a variance required. And certainly at that point in time, property owners, members of the public, have the ability to come and either submit, written submission to council or verbal submission to council, voicing their concerns with respect to the variance. If there are no variances required, there would be no notices sent out to adjacent property owners, and this comes straight to council.
Additional questions, comments from council? Councilor Coulson?
One moment, there we go. So it might seem I'm gonna talk out of both sides of my mouth here. I like this business. I think, a resident commented that it's the type of thing that we want to encourage. I absolutely agree. Bring some employment to Lantzville. So I like it, and I like the concepts of what they presented, but for reasons that all the petitioners cited, Councillor Haim, Councillor Swain spoke to, the lack of specifics in this bylaw is concerning. I understand the points made about how things are limited, but Lack of clarity in our bylaws has been extremely troublesome over the past few years here. There's a couple things on the agenda tonight that stem from lack of clarity, and I really can't support this until this bylaw is tighter. You know, what that means I'll leave up to staff, but there's certainly things we can do, in my opinion, that provide more clarity on how it can be used based on the various permutation allowed in our general bylaw here. Thanks.
Councillor Colquitt.
Speaking in favor of this motion, this bylaw, this rezoning, this is the time to establish the things that are in this bylaw. This sets out the parameters for the development property. The development permit is very detailed, and that's the normal process. And there's opportunity then for staff to work with the proponent. They can go back to all these comments that were made and said, these are the concerns the residents have raised. How are you addressing these concerns? They can work with the proponent to get this proposal in a form that hopefully will be acceptable and satisfy those requirements. Those residents can also come and speak at the meeting when we have the development permit here. That's the time when a person goes to the extent of doing architectural renderings and drawings and does all the rest of that work that goes along with it. So I would just encourage council to support this. It's, as Councillor Colson has said, it's a good idea. It's the sort of businesses that we would like to have in the community. I just think that it's the right process and it's the right time to pass the zoning and then work with the people on the development permit on the details of what's going to be outside.
Additional comments? Councillor Hayne?
Just following up on Councillor Colquitt's comments, I still don't see why then, if we're going to get in the future, put some certainty to this proposal on this property, why can't we do it now? That way we don't have to worry about a development permit process, which we may or may not be able to get input into. Do it now, then the residents have that assurance that things are going to be fine. Why do we have to wait for another process in order for that to happen? Just do it now.
Councillor Colson and then Colquitt.
Yeah, I agree, because I don't think our current processes are working very well for existing residents. If we have 8 development permits come in, all with some permutation of this, that's 8 times council has to have these discussions. Do it right here up front, sooner in the process. Clarity.
Councillor Colquitt.
Just want to reiterate, this is a rezoning application, and you put certain things in from a zoning bylaw that you address at the time of zoning, and then you deal with the details when you get to the development permit. That's why the process is laid out that way.
Councillor Swain.
Yeah, through the chair to staff, or to Mr. Limshu, is this not in fact a new zone that we're creating?
That's
Or
correct.
type of zoning?
That's correct, it is a new zone.
So, and to follow up on that, in your opinion, would this not be setting precedent for future zoning in Lantzville?
That's correct. It does give other property owners the ability to apply for similar zoning.
Thank you.
Very good. Just a couple questions for Sten. Based on my read of the commercial rate, there does not appear to be a limitation on whether it could be all commercial or all residential. Is it required to be mixed use, or is it can be one or the other?
The way the bylaw reads right now, it could be one or the other, or it could be mixed, because the residential is part of the principal permitted use section.
Okay. I believe Councillor Colquitt made some reference to 10 units.
No,
Was that coming from somewhere, or is that just a number? Okay. So one of the concerns with respect to some of the people giving public input was residential use, complete residential use. There's a minimum area for residential use. How many residential units could fit on this property?
Again, I'd have to sit down and do the detailed calculations, so we're just looking at all residential units, because it would come back to the amount of parking required setbacks, how big the units are going to be at the end of the day in terms of building square footage.
I appreciate what Councillor Kolpoff's saying about process, et cetera, and when it comes to zoning and the use of zoning and the level of clarity, the lack of clarity in zoning, and then tighten up on the development permit side. My concern revolves around the expressions of revitalization of the village core includes basically mixed use, commercial and residential. There are some people that like residential above, there are those people that don't like residential above. From my standpoint, this zoning, because it does not promote the mixed use, and by promote I mean having it so that there is a mixed use, and the fact that it could be all residential if that's what financially made sense. I don't like the lack of detail within the zoning. I mean, I've read other zoning bylaws where it speaks to the number of units, a maximum, minimum, a specific expression of mixed use as a requirement. And while I appreciate the intent expressed by the proponents, the fact is that when it comes to it, if they came forward through a development permit process and said, we're going to do all residential, multi-story residential, it would not be our choice. It would not be the community's choice. And speaking with respect to the village core and the idea of the enhancement of it, I think, in my opinion, it requires the encouragement of that mixed use. And the bylaw as presented does not do that for me. Additional input. Actually, sorry, Mr. Lynch?
Well, I was just going to put this on the table for council to consider. I think, as staff, we certainly understand the concerns being raised by members of council. Certainly like the opportunity to sit down with the applicant and look at their proposal and see if there is something we can do with respect to revising the bylaws so that it's given a higher level of comfort to council moving forward.
Just a question in terms of process, if that was to occur, would it not require another public hearing?
That's correct.
So it moves back in that process. Okay. Actually, if I could just kind of make one other comment. Councillor Geselbrecht made mention about how there's no empirical evidence of the concerns of the residents on increased traffic volume and noise. The challenge becomes the case of whose responsibility is it to establish the comfort level? Because once it's there, you can't turn the clock back. And personally, I don't believe that it's the responsibility of the residents to provide that information. I think it's the responsibility of the district with the proponent to provide the residents with the assurance with regards to those nuisance aspects. So, any further discussion? Councillor Colton.
I'm just curious what our options are here. Obviously, one of our options is to pass this. One of them is to decline it. Did I maybe read between the lines of Mr. Lynch? Go ahead.
I believe there's a third option, and that is to refer the bylaw back to staff to work with the applicant to see if we can address the concerns raised by council.
Move we refer it back to staff.
Moved by Councillor Kolkoff, second by Councillor Geselbrecht. You're referring it. Staff, is Councillor Kolkoff's motion in order? Yeah.
There's a motion on the floor, give the bylaw third reading, and then making a motion to return it to send it to staff to bring back on the floor.
Just a question procedurally though, if we have to hold another public hearing, if there's any changes or amendments, will...
Staff will bring it back on the floor.
Okay, so motion to refer, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. That moves us down to item 12A, verbal updates. Councillor Swain.
Nothing to report.
Councillor Hain.
Nothing to report.
Councillor Kolkoff.
Nothing to report.
Councillor Neary.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I simply wish to report that At the last meeting of the Parks and Rec Commission, we held our appreciation dinner, which took place over the road at the Lantzville Club. And members of the Commission all wanted me to express their thanks to Council for the recognition and acknowledgement of their work on the Commission. They truly appreciated the dinner. A good time was had by all. There was a lot of laughter. And I think staff were glad that we'd been placed in the anteroom rather than the main part of the pub.
Thank you. Councillor Coulson.
Nothing.
Councillor Gilbert.
Nothing to report, thank you.
Nothing from myself. Which gets us to 12B, OCP Review Select Committee meeting minutes and recommendation. Included in there is the terms of reference for the OCP committee. Move the recommendation by Councillor Haynes, seconded by Councillor Gilbert. Any discussion on the recommendation? Just for the public, the recommendation is that they not fill the 2 vacant seats on the OCP Select Committee. Councillor Coulson.
Just for information, I attended that meeting, I think as did most councillors, where this recommendation was made. And one of the members brought up an interesting point that there was little to no representation on the committee of the segment of Lantzville that prefers no to low development. In fact, the individual that brought it up that said he probably was the most modest of the group in terms of development. So it was an interesting comment when you consider what might be coming from the committee and possible preference as to the direction the community goes.
Anything further? All those in favor? Opposed? Sorry, let me do that again. In favor? Opposed? Councillor Swain, Mayor Hain opposed, motion carried. Item 12C, Parks and Rec Commission meeting minutes from June the 15th, 2017. Sorry?
Oh, we don't.
Yeah, we don't do that
Information
anymore.
okay.
We all stare at each other for a couple minutes and then we move on. Sorry. Any questions, comments with regards to the Parks and Rec meeting minutes? Councillor Coulson.
I see the mountain bike skills park is delayed due to weather and ground conditions. What exactly are we looking for in terms of ground conditions?
Dry.
Yes, but I'm curious when we get such a window. We've had a pretty dry while. Yeah.
Councillor Neary.
Thank you, Your Worship. Speaking to this, it's very frustrating. I acknowledge that we're all waiting with bated breath for the window of opportunity to present itself, and that has not happened. We did have apparently during May a pretty good dry period that we were expecting to start the work, but when the prep work was done, it was found that the underlying soils were waterlogged, it was clay, and so a lot more prep work had to be done than anticipated. And just as the contractor was ready to get on the ferry, the heavens opened and we're back to square one. I'm really, really worried that this project should get its feet off the ground this year, preferably before the end of summer. But we're at the whim of the weather, unfortunately, and I don't know what else to tell you.
Thank you for that update. Councillor Swain.
Yeah, just to add to that, I drove by another day and it looks like they're in the process of doing the drainage. So that was one of the issues, is drainage.
Councillor Kolkoff.
Just point of information to that site, there is a well up in the corner of that site, and which is at least in part artesian, and it was I was the one that built that park the way it is now, that cuts the fields in there, and there's a lot of groundwater, and that's probably one of the reasons that they originally went to a well there. So it's not only rain that we're dealing with, but there is a lot of spring type groundwater in that area. Same even further down there.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, moving on to 13A 2017 BC Municipalities Convention. with respect to it, looking for 3 individuals to attend UBCM in Vancouver in September. Councillor Heaton?
I'd like to attend.
Okay. Let's do that first, recognizing it says list up to 3 council members in. Who has interest or the availability? Councillor Swain? Anybody else? Councillor?
Sure.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so we're 3? Okay, so basically we need a motion listing the 3 individuals. Councillor Muir? Councillor Muir?
Listing Councillor Hain, Councillor Swain and Councillor Coulson.
Okay. Second by Councillor Kolkoff. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Statement of Financial Information 2016 in our reports is the Sophie report.
I just wanted to confirm that the second part of the motion, that was part of the motion.
I took it to mean the whole thing.
Okay, so we're,
Yeah.
good if anybody else wants to attend.
Yep. Yes. Green means go.
With regard to ministry, meetings with ministry, is it council's preference that staff develop a list and provide the council for consideration, or is your preference to communicate to us with,
Closer to the microphone, please. See if it's
or is it,
Yeah, it's on.
or is it your preference to provide us with items that you would like us to include in the list and then get back to them on that? So,
Why don't we just have council provide any areas of interest to staff? Staff can take those, any things that they believe might be missing or otherwise, and then just fire the information back to us.
thank you.
Okay, so we're good to go? Okay, Sophie Report 2016. Do note that there is, Councilor Coulson, is this back to UBCM or something?
No, sorry, before you carry. Is it possible to put this into low mode again? Sorry, it's just tough to hear you folks at times.
I did put it on low, before the meeting started.
Are we talking about fan?
Yeah, the fan still hasn't ramped down. So.
Oh, okay. I thought you
Sorry.
meant the microphone. Yeah.
Sorry, interject.
Sure, we get air conditioning, now people complain.
Yeah, countless.
Well, I wish the weather would warm up. Okay, so Sophie Report. Do note there are the amended pages. As mentioned, there was a change on the expense amounts. And in fact, it was my expense amount was originally overstated. Just other than that, it's the same as was in the agenda.
Yes, that is correct. It is the only one change. It was, the expense item was $258.
Okay, so we're looking for approval of Sophie. Moved by Councillor Kolkoff, seconded by Councillor Geselbrecht. Discussion. Councillor Coulson.
Through the staff, I have to know what my $13 in expense was. I never submitted anything, so I'm curious.
The same as Councillor Geselbrecht.
Yeah.
It was a budget meeting where a meal was provided for what
There you go.
I did have a burger, thank you. And a pop.
Okay, any relevant questions and comments? I guess that was relevant. Okay, hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Annual municipal report. There's a motion there that we accept the annual municipal report. So that's Councillor. So moved by Councillor Kolkoff, seconded by Councillor Geselbrecht. Thank you. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Minetown Day 2017 Parade Road closure, September the 9th, 2017. Councillor Neary, do you want to Parks and Rec? So.
I guess so. Okay, thank you, Your Worship. The motion is, or the recommendation is that council authorises the closure of traffic of that portion of Lantzville Road from the intersection of Ware Road and Lantzville Road to Huddlestone Road from 9:45 a.m. to 11 a.m. on Saturday, September the 9th, 2017 to facilitate the Minetown Day Parade.
Second by Councillor Hain. Discussion. Councillor Geselbrecht.
I guess this will give a chance for the traffic to see some Colette Road there for a while as well.
Just a quick question to Councillor Neary. Will the parade be marshalling on Colette Road as it did last year? That's what it was last year.
I'm not certain at this point, but perhaps Councillor
I can
Swayze.
speak to that. Yeah, so basically it'll be lining up on Jack's and then going on Colette and then feeding on to Lantzville.
Another petition.
Okay, anything further? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Item 14D, amendment of subdivision and development bylaw number 55.1. Councillor Coulson, this is a result of a previous notice of motion.
Yes, I move that council request staff insert an additional section into existing bylaw 55.1 stating something to the effect of, quote, if a targeted use is not covered by one of these sections, then it is not permitted.
Any seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Hain. Discussion. Councillor Coulson?
So on page 115, I just caught the applicable excerpt. There was a staff memo developed back in September, October of 2016 regarding bylaw 55.1. And essentially staff took a detailed look at the bylaw and basically declared that if something's not if something's not specifically stated in a bylaw, then it's not regulated. So bylaw 55.1 currently has basically 4 sections stating or demonstrating what conditions should be in place to get a municipal water connection or how you get water if there isn't a municipal water connection. But because there wasn't a clause that essentially said, as I made in the motion, if there's something to the effect that if it's not covered by one of these sections, then it's not permitted. The interpretation was then taken that if we don't say that, then it can't be regulated, then we can do whatever we want with water. So extending that further, this is quite troublesome because bylaw 55.1 basically gave some protection to private well owners. If we don't have that kind of protection, there's really nothing that could stop a developer, another landholder from buying a property with a large producing well and doing whatever they want with that water, transferring it across the district, what have you. That's terribly concerning. When you go back and look at bylaw 55 back in 2005 and sort of how it evolved into bylaw 55.1, the 4 points in the existing bylaw were put there because those were the reasons or the mechanisms to which water was to be provided. And then we pulled the rug from under all that from an interpretation technicality, I would suggest. So there's other things that staff had brought forward that needed to be addressed in 55.1, but right now I'm just proposing this very simple one to make sure that bylaw 55.1 going forward follows the 4 points on the existing one, and we add the clarification that if something's not noted specifically, then it's not permitted. Get some protection back in there for private well owners. Thank you.
Further discussion. Councillor Hain?
Well, this is one of those bylaws that was referred to earlier that has no clarity. And if we are interested and seriously, genuinely interested in protecting the concerns of the residents and the community as a whole, you would think we'd want to make sure there's clarity on this bylaw so that it's not abused. And that's the problem I see right now. Bylaw 55.1 was designed with a specific purpose, and for whatever reason that purpose is not being recognized. We see that now in the case of, even in the foothills, they were able to share water and go around 55.1 and give water to the neighboring properties under bylaw 55, which, brings into question the usefulness of 55.1. So, it comes back to me, what are we here for if we're not here to protect the residents and to protect the community? So for me, we need to beef up this bylaw to make it do the job that it was intended to do and protect the water supply and not make water a commodity in this community, which seems to be where we've gone to now. So I'd like to see us strengthen the bylaw. It was a recommendation of the previous CAO. Why wouldn't we do that? And so hopefully all support the bylaw, support the motion.
Okay, further discussion. Councillor Neary.
Thank you, Your Worship. For those people who are familiar with the saga of activity that's taken place over the last year, connected with Bylaw 55.1, you won't be surprised to hear that I won't be supporting this. There was a staff memo, and in fact, a recommendation did come forward from staff. And in November, Council chose to review the bylaw in its entirety. However, that process was hijacked by another motion that took it back to Council, a motion that Council resoundingly rejected. I think at the moment we've got an OCP review underway. It's a very comprehensive and thorough review. It's reviewing an OCP for the district which is 12 years old. This bylaw, I think, is, I can't remember what year it was, 2005 or 2006, is also nearing, I think, the end of its utility. Evidently, there's controversy surrounding this, but I do not believe in reviewing bylaws and making changes piecemeal. I think this needs to be part of a comprehensive review of all our land use and development bylaws, which will result once the new OCP has been adopted. That will be a necessary step to take, and that's the time for this to be reviewed. Council has had its chance to review it. It rejected its opportunity to review it, and I don't see why we should start tinkering with it right now.
Additional discussion. Councillor Golson.
So I didn't bring the work from November, but it was not a comprehensive review. There was another piecemeal motion put in about the Director of Public Works having the sole discretion for authorizing connections. This is a very simple change to make. You know, the staff report said because the bylaw is silent with regards to everything not specifically referred to, there are no regulations applicable to anything other than what is specifically referred to. So if we don't add this clause, we might as well toss this out, because what it has is 4 points stating what is allowed, because there isn't a fifth point saying that if we don't specifically cover it in here, it's not allowed. The bylaw is useless. There's some very high producing wells out there in Lantzville right now. They could be purchased. That water could be used however the owner wants. Doesn't have the regulations, the protections in place, like the some of the other developments where they have to look at interference tests for neighboring wells. That's pretty darn concerning to me. So to kind of dismiss this as not a priority, horribly concerning. Councillor Hames spoke to an example we saw up in the foothills where water was provided to a neighboring property that was not in a comprehensive development zone, clearly against what is said in the bylaw, but because of a technicality it was allowed. There's several other major developments or proposals in with Lantzville right now. Almost willing to put money on the fact that something like this is also unfolding behind the doors right now. So.
Councillor Gazarel.
Okay. It's been raised twice about the Foothills development, which was a co-development. This bylaw was specifically referred to as one of the allegations in a lawsuit that was brought against Councillor Colclough last year.
What does this have to do with
this has to do with this 55.1.
Point of order, is that not an in-camera topic?
The lawsuit is certainly no in-camera topic. It was bruited throughout the newspapers and was unceremoniously dropped.
Sorry,
my point is...
Councillor Gazarel, point of order has been called. What is it you're referring to, Councillor Hames?
Was what was submitted in the lawsuit considered in-camera documents?
I don't know specifically what you're referring to, so I
The
can't
bylaw
really...
55 and 55.1?
Okay.
We can ask the reporter, since he reported it in the news bulletin, so I don't think it was an in-camera.
Okay,
My
Councillor
point is
Gazarel,
this.
please speak to the motion.
Yeah, my point is this. This has been before council for a long time. We have a new CAO who's been in the saddle for less than 2 months now. We've had 3 previous CAOs since 2015. We've just appointed a full-time planner, Mr. Limshu. Folks, we got to give this a chance to develop. We have it, as was stated, we have an OCP project underway, comprehensive. Lanark Developments is spearheading this. Let's give it a chance. This piecemeal, let's tack this on, let's tack that on, referring to the foothills ad nauseum. Let's just give this a chance to develop the proper way through the proper channels.
Councillor Coulson.
So we keep hearing about process and proper channels. This has been before council numerous times. We've always voted against looking at it. You know, we keep beating on the foothills. That's only because it was a current example of what unfolded. We tried to get this looked at before the foothills development was approved. Council voted it down for whatever reasons they chose to. It came back again because staff identified deficiencies in the bylaw. Those aren't my words, it's right on paper from prior staff. And they speak very clearly as to how to address it. We're choosing to ignore that now. Quite simple. So carry on this way, but the facts show differently, staff reports show differently. We need to do something about this. Well, there's going to be troubled residents out there when their wells are going dry because we're selling water as a commodity.
Additional comments, questions? I was around when this was drafted. It had a purpose. 55-1 itself had a purpose in the fact that what it would do is it would create the aspect that the district would be the decision maker when it comes to things that become part of the community water system, when it comes to the aspect of giving out water connections. There was provision in there for certain properties to be able to use it within CD zones, and the understanding at that time and for a number of years was that the aspect of the use of wells within CD zones was permitted because CD zones go through an approval process that provided the protection for the residents. Essentially, by having it in this case right now where it's effectively not fulfilling its intent, water does become a commodity. It can be traded between properties. It can be sold between properties. All they have to do is say that they're developing together and they're good to go. The bylaw itself does not fulfill its purpose. If you don't want it, vote to repeal it. But having something there that does not work and recognizing that and ignoring it, in my mind, is an irresponsible way of doing things. I understand the consideration of a wider viewpoint, but in the meantime, you create the protections for the community rather than having it so that it's in favor of developers at this time. When it comes to the consideration of the bylaw itself, the wording, like I said, was interpreted one way for a number of years. All of a sudden, it changed its interpretation, and Councillor Coulson is just attempting to address that with this amendment itself. Unfortunately, some people seem to take that as being anti-development. I view it as a case of fulfilling that intent. Like I said, if you want to make it wide open with regards to buying and selling of wells, repeal 55-1. But in the meantime, we should make it so that it works, and that's what Councillor Coulson's trying to do. Any further discussion? Councillor Geselbrecht?
Well, I'm glad the mayor clarified what Councillor Coulson is after. There is a very special clause in 55.1, and that is that the Director of Public Works has the final say. So I feel confident that our Director of Public Works will act in our best interest, as he has over the last, he's been here since the creation. He was involved in the creation of this particular amendment, so I'll be able to sleep at night.
Councillor Colpath.
Just one particular clarification. Contrary to what Councillor Coulson said, the district still does, through their bylaws, have the the ability to regulate groundwater and dictate the terms and conditions on which wells they take. Any well that the district considers, they can require, do require under the bylaw, that comprehensive pump tests be done, which take into account neighboring wells. So to say that people can just pump water out and make other people's wells go dry is inaccurate. The tools are there for the district to look after that.
Any further? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Councillor Swain, Councillor Colfer, Councillor Neary, and Councillor Geselbrecht. Motion defeated. Going on to item 14E, regarding the staff report on legal basis for the water being provided to lower Lantzville properties. Councillor Colfer.
I move that council request staff prepare a report including supporting documents explaining on what legal basis Nanaimo water can be provided to lower Lantzville properties based on Highway 19 being the dividing reference between upper and lower Lantzville, whereas the Lantzville-Nanaimo water agreement specifically 1. References upper Lantzville being the recipient of Nanaimo water, 2. The district solicitor conflict of interest opinion of 2013 separated the supply of water between upper and lower Lantzville, and 3. All district publications to Lantzville residents make reference to upper Lantzville being the sole recipient of Nanaimo water at the time of implementation.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Haynes. Discussion. Councillor Coulson.
Yeah, so I didn't bring an entire suite of information, but I did attach 3 reference points to the motion I submitted. The first one was the conflict of interest letter from Dodd Lindstone to the District of Lantzville. And there's 2 points in there. At some point in the future, once the properties in Upper Lantzville are served by city water pursuant to the proposed agreement with Nanaimo, the district will have excess capacity in its water supply system and will be in a position to supply its water to properties within Lower Lantzville. At the time, council will need to consider and adopt development cost charges, connection fees, and user rates associated with the provision of district water in Lower Lantzville. So, to me, quite clear, just the general language structure, not the Upper Lantzville zone, Upper Lantzville. Adjective, noun. The next point in that conflict of interest letter speaks to various councillors, and Mayor Jack DeYoung, Councillors Wachowski, and Dempsey reside in Lower Lantzville. I'll stop there. They happen to be, or they would be provided water from the upper pressure zone if the water system was to be extended. I'll carry on with the example. Their properties are served by wells. As noted above, once the properties in Upper Lantzville are serviced with city water, the district will be in a position to service additional parcels within Lower Lantzville with water from the district supply. And then there was another piece of that conflict interest opinion, and it was titled Providing Water to Lower Lantzville. And it just goes into more depth on the conflict of interest, perhaps, of various members of council at the time. I'll then jump forward to November 2016, the grant application for the Lantzville-Nanaimo Water Interconnection header. And so in that, there was a section providing the rationale of why the project is needed and objectives it will achieve. It's stated in there that the, sorry, get my glasses here. The additional water source will allow for sustainable and reliable water supply and provide service to those without municipal water service in the areas of the district serviced by the upper water pressure zone. So my point is, at some point, our interpretation of what upper lower Lantzville meant seems to have switched. And basically my motion is asking for a report from staff clarifying how we can provide water to lower Lantzville.
Okay, further discussion. Councillor Haynes?
Thank you. Just a little bit of history. When we had our dinner meeting with the City of Nanaimo Council on January 30th, 2013, a Lantzville council member pitched the idea of water to Upper Lantzville to help those existing residential properties that have water quantity and quality problems. At that point in time, the whole water discussion had been focused on Lower Lantzville, bringing water down here. at that meeting, we didn't have a discussion about upper and lower pressure zones and upper and lower Lantzville. It was all just upper Lantzville. And we spoke about it in a geographical sense. We were very clear on what we were doing. The next day, Mayor DeYoung and staff prepared a letter to the City of Nanaimo recommending that a water agreement be prepared that would have City of Nanaimo water go only to upper Lantzville. No council meeting, it was just the direction, and that's what went out. It's all public. Now I'm hearing that City of Nanaimo water is going to developers in lower Lantzville, which is a bit of a concern. You know, for me, it's about whether or not we're being genuine about what we're really doing here. You know, are we being genuine with our residents? Are we being genuine with the City of Nanaimo on who we intend to give water to? You know, we've made representations to the City of Nanaimo and the residents of Lantzville through all of our correspondence and public meetings that the water was only for upper Lantzville. And now, through the survey, it appears that water is really only for development. For me, it's about transparency and honesty, integrity, and making sure we tell people what we really intend to do. What is our goal? What is our game plan here? I support a staff report that would clarify that, because I have to be honest, I'm as confused as anybody, and I've been here the longest, because it seems to be water used to be for existing residents in need, and now I don't know who it's for other than not them. So I would like to have some clarity on this, and really I'd like to know who's going to pay, because that's the big part too. So I support the motion. I think residents have a right to know. It's part of the OCP. It's part of where is the community headed, who's benefiting, who's paying, and is this what the City of Nanaimo signed on for? Thanks.
Councillor Cole.
Well, I wasn't here on council when it was negotiated or signed. I read it after the fact, but I guess as somebody with a public works and an engineering background, I read it from that perspective. And I can only assume that both the City of Nanaimo and the District of Lantzville, public works and engineering staff, were involved in the development of that agreement. There's only one place where it's definitive, and I think that may have been the clause that Councillor Coulson was referring to, and I believe it's under fire protection where it talks about upper Lantzville and states, I'm not sure if it's IE or brackets, but above the pressure reducing valve. Anybody in engineering public works in both municipalities, unfortunately Director Spears isn't here to address this, would be looking at it from that perspective. They're not going to look at this and say the highway, they're going to look at the water system. I don't and haven't heard that there are developers now getting water from the City of Nanaimo. So Councillor Haim, I would love to know where you got that information. The district, the Riley report does not state that. That's totally false. You go and look at it and read the whole paragraph, it's false.
Hang on. Continue, Councillor Cole.
Lost the train of thought. Anyways, unfortunately, Director Spears is not here to address this. I don't know, I'd ask if staff, either Mr. Livshoe or our CAO maybe has anything to add, but it seems to me that considering the fact that we're not actually even considering turning the valve on, we've never even discussed implementing it, I don't know where we're going with this.
Neither of them look willing to speak, so we'll continue. Further discussion. Councillor Gilbert.
Yes, through the chair, I'd like to ask Councillor Haim where she got this information that the City of Nanaimo is providing water to a developer in Lower Lantzville. I've never heard that. Question was, where did Councillor Haim get the information that the City of Nanaimo is providing water to a developer in Lower Lantzville?
Okay, Councillor Coulson, you have your hand up. Is that in relation to the question? Okay. Councillor Haim, is it okay? Councillor Coulson?
So from a document that was briefly publicly available regarding, I forget the title of it, but it was water servicing essentially for the Ryland property. It says, we assume that given this water main will connect to the District of Lantzville water system, it would be the source of water for the proposed development.
Sorry, could you repeat that again?
So I'll read the whole paragraph. Our review of the preliminary design information for the proposed water main connecting the District of Lantzville water system to the City of Nanaimo water system, prepared by Coors and Associates Engineering Limited, indicates that a 250 centimeter water main is, sorry, I don't know what theta means, anyways. It's a weird unit. Water main is designed within Lantzville Road between the District of Lantzville.
Councillor Neary?
Excuse me. Councillor Coulson refers to a document that was briefly available. I'm under the impression that this document forms part of documentation that was forwarded to the district and is currently subject to privacy rules. So I'm not sure that we should be even, quoting from it, regardless of whether it was at one point within the public domain. So I'd welcome a ruling on that. I may be overruled, but
I have no idea what the document itself is. So, Councillor Coulson, can you give a bit of background as to what document you're reading from?
I forget the title of it, but the excerpt I'm reading, it's on Twitter, and it.
Well, it must be valid then.
Well, I'm not commenting on its validity. I'm just saying it's publicly available. It was publicly available, and I'm attempting to address the question.
Councillor Coulson.
Until the CAO said to take it off.
Councillor Coulson. Councillor Colclough is able to answer my question.
Yeah.
I went back to that document when you raised this some months ago, and it's the servicing report for that development. So it outlines where how the servicing will be provided for the development. So that's what it is. And I'd like to hear the rest of that.
However, I still don't know whether it's something that's still considered public access or not. So I'm unfortunately going to ask you to stop reading from it until we get clarity.
I would ask for clarification on what personal information is in that excerpt which couldn't be continue to remain in the public domain.
That's something without having the document in front of me I can't, and neither can Stan.
That's fine.
So, okay. Councillor Gilbert.
Well, my question remains, does Councillor Haim accept the explanation given by Councillor Coulson as to where she got the information that the City of Nanaimo is supplying water to developers? I'm waiting.
She's not required to answer your question, Councillor Gilbert.
And I accept the explanation provided by Councillor Colclough. He obviously read the same document, so yes. So we're both on the same page, and he's got it, and so do other people, and it's on Twitter. So there you go. Thank you.
Okay, further comment? Sorry, Councillor Coulson.
And sorry, back to the Councillor Colclough's reference to the fire protection and a reference to a pressure reducing valve. One instance that might offer clarity, but how many more references that would suggest, if you talk to an average resident, what upper lower Lantzville means? It's simple. In the circulation that was put out in October 2014 on this topic, there's a section, why was upper Lantzville selected to receive water versus lower Lantzville? You know, that's not a Freudian slip between the upper pressure zone or upper Lantzville. And when you're presenting information like this, if we indeed intended it to be zone, poorly done, like clarity, right? We talked about this. I won't bother reading the excerpt, but my comment earlier, all of the circulation to residents spoke to upper lower Lantzville, and we appear to be heading down this path where we're playing semantics again, or wordsmithing to try and interpret the agreement to an intent that may not and likely was not intended. And I'll stop there.
Okay, further discussion. For myself, one of the telling points is Don Lidstone's conflict of interest letter from June the 24th, 2013. It is very specific. It specifically mentions individuals who are, while some or part of their properties could be in the upper pressure zone, they are technically in lower Lantzville, yet in that respect here, he separates them out as not receiving water, in his opinion. When it comes to the standpoint of the technical people, the Freds of the world and the Bill Sims of the world, they are not the ones who voted on the agreement. They are not the council members of the city of Nanaimo that voted on the agreement. They are not the council members with respect to the district of Lantzville that voted on the agreement. So what they would have thought, with all due respect, really isn't that important. It's what the people who voted on it thought at the time. And certainly all representations indicate that the separation is upper and lower Lantzville, which is not defined within the agreement, and therefore I would suggest that you take the common usage, which is the separation of the highway. When it comes to clarity, similar to the 55-1, we need to provide clarity. And Councillor Guzebrak's questioning the aspect of where those developers are getting their water from. Well, we need to provide clarity, both not only in terms of the Fred Spears and the Bill Sims of the world, but for the councils and for the general public, so that they can understand what they can and can't do on their property and how their own properties are going to be serviced and the direct impact and cost of that. So, you know, we go along kind of taking these things, and somebody says, well, this is what I think it means, etc. We need definitive answers with respect to it so that the public can move forward and understand the implications of what's in front of them and make their plans accordingly. The he said, she said, and all that's irrelevant. The fact is that we need to provide to the public the clarity with regards to what the actual outcome will be. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Councillor Swain, Councillor Polkoff, Councillor Neary, and Councillor Guzebrak, motion defeated. Which gets us on to item 14F, the official community plan review process and open house. Motion recommended by Councillor Hain. So Councillor Hain.
I apologize if this is long, and I bring this forward out of concerns that have come to me by a number of residents. I move that due to concerns regarding the transparency and accountability of the OCP review process, the OCP open house be postponed until staff and the consultant present a written report to council and the OCP committee addressing the following. Why and how were comments of some surveys not included in the report distributed to the OCP committee and the public? What additional steps have been taken to ensure that all submitted surveys and their comments have been included and distributed to the OCP committee and the public for consideration? Why was OCP related correspondence received by district staff not distributed to the OCP committee until months after receipt and only after it was requested by an OCP committee member? Which government official indicated in the owners of the golf course letter that subdivision of their lands to a quarter-acre parcel would be acceptable prior to any discussion by or with the OCP committee? Details of any and all other correspondence received by the consultant or the district related to the updated OCP that is not formed part of the public agenda for either council or the OCP committee. And I'll speak to it if I get a second.
Second by Councillor Coulson.
These are the reasons I'm bringing this forward. A number of concerns have been raised by residents regarding the transparency and the accountability of the OCP process and the information being collected and provided to the community. Examples, and these are just a few that I've been provided. It has been stated that survey results and related comments have been identified as not being included in the survey summary. I've got a number of residents that say their comments are not in there. Residents have come to me expressing frustration that their comments are not in the survey, and they question whether their survey results were even included in the survey summary. As an example, a resident has provided me a photocopy of her completed survey response and can find no evidence of her comments in the survey. Other residents have gone to staff with similar concerns and been told that a number of surveys were found at the district office after the fact. Did these make it into the survey results? And finally, we have staff confirming that the comments submitted by residents were changed by the Discovery Research Company that collated the results, and then they stated in the report that they were verbatim. These are serious. Next part, letters sent by residents and property owners regarding changes to OCP zoning designations were not provided to the OCP committee or even mentioned to the OCP committee. At the June 7, 2017 OCP committee meeting, staff suddenly referred to letters received in support of increased density in the Harwood, Fernmar, and Golf Course properties. The committee only received a copy of this correspondence when a request for the copy of the letters was made after the meeting. The majority of the letters were dated in January 2017, with some going back to November 2016. Yet neither the committee nor the OCP workshops heard anything about this. I am concerned that there is other correspondence we have not received. Areas that have requested zoning changes were not included in the survey to the residents, even though the requests were received in advance of the preparation of the community survey. At the June 7th OCP committee meeting, the consultant presents a proposed new density map for the areas covered by the letters. This has not been included in the public process. All of this information should have been included in the open houses and/or public meetings and in the survey. And in fact, troublesome is that a council member at the April 9th council meeting specifically asked the consultant if there were any changes planned for the Fernmar Golf Course area. No answer was provided. It appears some property owners were personally encouraged by district representatives to submit specific written requests for the committee's consideration, but no general request for this nature was ever advertised or presented to any other resident in the community. If we are going to give the opportunity for current and previous council members to get an increase in their density and property values, should we not be offering this to all residents? I know lots of residents in this community that could use $1 million. In my opinion, there are a number of questionable issues that impact the integrity of this OCP process. The terms of reference speaks to the committee having until November 2017 to complete their mandate. So there is time to give the residents in this process the proper accountability and transparency that it deserves. In fact, the November 2017 date was arbitrarily set, and there is no legal or legislative reason for it. The OCP is supposed to be a document guiding the community for years, and it must be above reproach. Just so the residents are aware, after this planned open house on Wednesday, June the 28th, the OCP committee is meeting on July 12th and 17th, and then the OCP document is going to come to council on approximately July the 24th for first, maybe second reading. When will the public get the opportunity to provide more input before the document is prepared, especially with all these proposed changes in density? This is why I'm bringing it forward.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Neary.
Thank you, Your Worship. As a member of the Official Community Plan Review Committee, I'm surprised to hear that a number of concerns have been raised. They seem like they may be legitimate concerns, but they have not been brought to the Official Community Plan Committee. And I would suggest that that is the starting point to address whatever concerns have been raised. I think including anecdotal comments in any survey is always fraught with, problems, because the anecdotal comments don't necessarily affect the statistical results. The statistical results reflect the input to the survey. The anecdotal comments are interesting to read, and I've in past situations I've had binders, that thick to go with this kind of public consultation process, where you have to read through the anecdotal comments. But at the end of the day, the actual statistical information is what dictates the outcome of the survey. The problem is if something's overlooked or it's lost in the process, especially in a really small survey group, sample group of the size of Lantzville, then it becomes a bit more obvious, and we end up with these kind of question marks being raised. I don't think the integrity of the process is in question whatsoever. However, if there are issues that need to be addressed, I think that the Official Community Plan Review Committee is the venue at which to raise them, not at council, because they have not been voiced at that venue yet, and I would suggest that that's the source. I'm speaking against the motion. I can't find any justification for postponing the public open house. It will still serve its purpose. These questions can still be addressed at the same time. There is a means by which they can be addressed when the committee meets. But postponing the open house, I don't see any value to that whatsoever.
Councillor Colston, and then Councillor Goldblatt, and then Councillor Haynes.
So it's kind of fun to hear how this would be suggested to be pushed to the OCP committee, because I was at the meeting I was at, the committee expressed concerns about how limited their involvement has been to date. This was about 3 weeks ago, I think, the meeting in June, beginning of June. So a lot of issues were brought up, and out of that, I think it was 3 additional meetings were scheduled. One of them happened June 12th, I believe, and there's 2 more happening after the public information meeting. And so concerns such as this, we go around this death spin and process. Okay, it goes to the committee. They don't have the time to do anything meaningful about it because they have to chat about it, make a recommendation to council, has to come to us. We knock it around, and eventually it fails on a 4-3 vote. But the point is we run out of time for the public involvement. And you know, we had a wonderful opportunity for this to be a good plan. Regarding the verbatim responses, they were paraphrased. Verbatim is exactly as it was said. It's not paraphrased. Otherwise, entitle the section Paraphrased Responses. And if we can't do anything meaningful statistically or by data mining with the verbal responses, why do we even bother asking? So we had support with refinements, and do not approve or something like that. So you know, the refinements portion, that was all verbal. So if that's the approach we're going to take, people might as well not have written anything, and you would have had 2 choices, yes, no. So I have also heard from residents on missing survey comments. That's troubling. That brings into question the integrity of the process. Heard from a resident, I think 2 actually, where their results may not have been forwarded to the survey company. Also troubling. This issue about zoning changes being requested. So at the meeting that Councillor Haim referred to, I specifically asked a question of the consultant. What was the mechanism for property owners to use to request zoning changes? And the golf course was an example I gave. And I admitted in the meeting, I met with the fella and he was asking what he could do. The response was, it's not over yet, something to that effect. That would have been a wonderful time for staff or the consultant to say, residents can submit requests to the OCP committee or staff to be considered for zoning changes. Simple, open, transparent, forthright. But here we are now, we find out that, oh, there have been letters submitted, and for full disclosure, I have since submitted one myself, but they didn't come to public light until someone in the OCP committee specifically asked for them. The optics stink, and that unfortunately brings into question the integrity of this process. I fully agree with all of these points that Councillor Haim has raised. Spoke to it at 2 different meetings now about how rushed this public information session is. I firmly believe we need to get a few more answers, slow things down, let the committee do their job, have it come to council for a review before we go to the people. Thanks.
Councillor Goldblatt.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't support postponing meetings, so I don't support the motion as well. I think a lot of these questions can be asked of staff at any time by anyone. In fact, I know there's at least one on there, the question's already been asked and responded to. I think we're getting a difference of opinion here with Councillor Haim chastising staff for possibly encouraging people to submit their requests, which I believe is the right thing to do. Somebody comes forward and says, here's what I would like to do, to say, great, submit your request in writing. And then we have Councillor Colson saying that would be the right thing to do. So I think Councillor Colson is correct. Councillor Haim is incorrect. There's a whole list of things there. I don't have a copy of your dissertation there, so I can't respond to them all. And I quite personally don't want to.
Councillor Hain.
A couple comments. We heard from a resident today who feels the process being rushed. He, like him, and I'm sure he speaks for many residents, where they would like more time to look at what's going on. This arbitrary deadline of July makes no sense. I'm not sure why, who's pushing that date. With regards to the OCP committee, they can only work with what they have. The residents asked council and the OCP committee to be notified of their concerns with regards to the surveys. We didn't hear anything. So you can only work with what you get, and if you don't get anything, it's tough. So, you know, this is only coming to light, I believe, out of frustration from residents, not getting responses and not being able to deal with what's going on. You know, these are things that we have to look at. With regards to residents submitting letters, fine, if we're going to go that route, then give everybody the chance now. Here we are at the 11th hour, we want to have an OCP document ready within a month, and yet we're not going to give everybody else that same opportunity. We just gave it to those that attended the kitchen meetings and were on the inside. No, everybody should get the same opportunities here. So, and then it has implications for our water master plan and our water distribution. Fine, if we want to go that route, let the community decide. But why are we making the decision on who gets the lift in property values?
Further discussion. I've got a question to staff with regards to the event on Wednesday. In all the advertising, it seems to refer to draft OCP directions and water master plan recommendations. To my knowledge, the water master plan recommendations have not come to council. They have not come through the OCP committee. So why are recommendations going to the general public before either the committee or council?
My mic's not working, but
This one here?
that's okay, I'll use this.
It's okay. It's okay. You can play. You can be up here with us.
The purpose of the open house coming up on Wednesday, as Mayor Haim alluded to, is to provide basically an outline of the policy directions with respect to OCP. And this is all predicated on what we've heard today through the various events that we've had. So the kitchen table meetings, the questionnaire at Minetown Days, the survey, as well as correspondence that we received to date. So again, it's general policy direction. It's not the final document or even a draft document for that matter. With respect to the water master plan, perhaps recommendations is too strong a word. I mean, basically, it's going to be similar vein to the OCP in that, what the boards will show is through the results of the survey as well as the findings of a consultant, it'll outline general direction with respect to how we're dealing with the provision of water for the community moving forward. Ultimately, the feedback that we get at that open house will be incorporated and put together, utilized to formulate the final report for the consultants who will then make the presentation to the council with the recommendations.
So I guess I'm still a bit confused because the publications put out by the district says it's a public event to review draft OCP directions and draft water master plan. Draft OCP directions and water master plan recommendations. A second time, exact same sentence. Down in the lower part, it talks about draft recommendations for the water master plan, including water supply standards and infrastructure priorities. I can't read it any way but a document that gives the recommendations, gives the direction, that has not been decided, has not been considered either by council or by any committee. And so with regards to Councillor Hain's motion, separate from those concerns, first off, build up expectations. Second of all, effectively something's going to be put in front of those residents that they're going to read as having come from council, for example, and been vetted by council and considered by council, which is not the fact. Effectively, this is something that's come through the consultant, for example, and going directly out to the public. And I know this kind of sounds kind of strange. What the heck are we here for if it's a case that these things go through that sort of a process? With regards to Councillor Haim's motion, the most troubling ones to me is the fact that there was correspondence received months ago that was not provided to the Review Select Committee, did not form part of a public agenda, when recognizing that in terms of transparency, those agendas are public. Why was correspondence not included in them? And so when it comes to the concerns that Councillor Haim has raised, regardless of whether or not the open house on Wednesday is postponed, I think that the OCP committee and council need the answers, and in fact are entitled to the answers to the questions raised by Councillor Haim. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Swain, Councillor Kolkoff, Councillor Neri, and Councillor Gersbach, motion defeated. As a result of the defeat of that motion, I'm going to do a follow-up motion. With regards to it, due to the concerns regarding the transparency and accountability of the OCP review process, that staff and the consultant be directed to prepare a written report to council and the OCP Review Select Committee addressing the 5 points raised by Councillor Haim. Seconded by Councillor Coulson. Discussion on that. Councillor Gersbach?
This is a late item, I take it, in which case
no, it's not. It's pursuant to an existing item on the agenda.
It's been defeated.
The motion has, the issue hasn't.
So can you just repeat the motion for me? It was that staff be directed to prepare a report responding to the 5.
Staff and the consultant be directed to prepare a report to council and the OCP Review Select Committee addressing the following and the same 5 points that Councillor Haim has raised in her motion.
It's the same motion.
No, it's not. It is changed because the main focus of the previous motion was the delay of the open house. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Haim?
Well, from my point of view, I can't see how you could not support this if you care about the integrity of this process. Because if we don't get answers to this, then for me, it puts this whole OCP process in question, and it should for the residents of this community. Because there are some big questions being asked by residents, big questions being asked by some members of the OCP committee about documents not being received, letters, density being proposed at the 11th hour. These are big questions that I think everybody has the right to have answers to, and I can't for the life of me understand why council wouldn't want that.
Councillor Neri.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm in two minds on this motion because the concerns that are being raised here, I think it's true that a number of the committee have raised some concerns, not all of these here, at the committee. But the committee has not raised these concerns, and the committee hasn't been given the opportunity to address them. So, while I think having raised them in a public venue like a council meeting, it now beholds us to consider how to address them, a report probably is in order. I'm just uncertain whether it should be coming to council or whether it should be going to the committee. But of course, the motion originates in council. So I'm kind of straddling the fence here. I think the questions do need addressing. They've been raised here. They've been raised by a councillor, a member of the OCP Review Committee. That committee is a committee of council, but it's not being given the opportunity to speak to this. So it's kind of like a chicken and egg thing. I mean, I don't object to the idea of finding the answers to the questions that have been raised. I just think that, bringing a report back to council is not the way to do it. So it's a dilemma. And I really don't know what the answer is. I'm not prepared to make a motion on the fly to send it somewhere else, because I'm trying to process what, the ramifications of this. It seems to me that by doing this, council is hijacking the OCP Review Committee's work and its process, which council handed to it. So I mean, if I could sit back and go, it's nothing to do with me, I would, but I have to vote one way or the other, and I'm really in a quandary. I don't want to support the motion, but I do think the answers need to be provided. I just don't think they should be provided to council. So I'll sit with bated breath and listen to what other people have to say before I make a decision.
Councillor Colclough.
Thank you. I too agree that we do need to get a report that addresses these 5 questions. I understand correctly, Councillor Hain, the motion is to provide the report to council and to the committee. Correct. So I think what I'm hearing from Councillor Leary is that her preference for her thoughts are that it should be addressed to the committee, which I also support. I mean, obviously we're going to see it too, but I think the process is that the committee would deal with it. So I would support this if it was to go to the committee.
Councillor Hain and Councillor Geselbrecht.
Well, I support going to the committee. I also support it coming to council. I think we have to restore some integrity and put some credibility back into this process. And council needs to see the answers to those questions. Because to be honest, right now the OCP committee hasn't even been, until the last meeting on June the 7th, and only after the meeting, because a request was made, did the committee get made aware of those letters. So the committee is not being kept up to date on what's occurring anyway. So it may be nice to say send it back to the committee, but the poor committee has kind of had their hands tied behind their back through this whole process. So it's been very difficult. So I think, you know, bring it to both. I'm okay with that.
Councillor Geselbrecht and Councillor Swain.
We've got 2 members of council who sit on the committee. I've heard Councillor Hain and Councillor Coulson say that they are getting, they've talked to people. I haven't seen any of that correspondence. My email is on the district website as well as all the other councillors and the mayor. I haven't seen the same outpouring, according to Councillor Hain, of people upset, people wanting something. I see the results of the survey. So if these questions are to be put, I can't support it going to staff. I would support that these questions be referred back to the OCP committee to deal with. We're paying the consultant good money. We've commissioned these people on the committee to look at it. Why bring it to council? Bring it back to the committee. So I can't support the motion.
Councillor Swain.
Through the chair, yeah, just echo a lot of Councillor Geselbrecht's comments. With respect to some members of council are getting really great information about what's going on and others aren't. Again, we have 2 members of council that sit on this committee, 2 different stories. I've attended a limited number of committee meetings. They are what they are. With respect to the consultant, I am interested to know from staff whether or not the consultant actually has any concerns with respect to this committee and how this committee is functioning and what direction it's going in. So I don't know if staff can provide a little bit of an update on that. If there's any concerns from the consultant.
Your Worship, through the council, certainly I can't speak directly for the consultant. I think, there has been some concerns raised with the amount of time put towards addressing various issues through this process. Certainly when the proposal was submitted by the consultant, there was a timeline put out there, and she given presentations with respect to the scheduling of the process. That's public information. And yeah, to be honest, I think there is some concerns from the consultant with respect to the process. They're dragged out and increasing the number of meetings that at some point in time they will have exceeded, and I would suggest that they're getting pretty close to it, exceeded the number of meetings allocated for various components of the project. So that's something that we have to be mindful of.
Just follow up on that. Are we on, like, are they about to run over budget on this, or is there concerns from that aspect, where the consultant is going way over time, and are we going to see requests coming back to council for more money?
Well, we're
for the
certainly-
OCP process.
Your worship, to the council, we're certainly working with a consultant in reviewing time allocations for various components of the OCP document. Obviously, the goal here is not to go over budget, and we'll certainly continue to work with the consultant through that aspect.
Just a couple other items. So just under the, I guess on page 31 of our agenda, in the terms of reference for the OCP committee, it says there the committee shall provide input on potential improvements. I sometimes get the impression that, you know, maybe the committee is trying to steer things in certain ways. I'm not too sure if that's what the consultant really wants. You know, they're trying to manage the process. Obviously, members, committee members can provide input, but you know, again, the public will have their chance, or have had their chance for input, and that should also be respected. You know, really, you know, like, it does concern me about how some of the survey responses were not included in the report verbatim. You know, I think people always look to see whether or not their surveys were entered, and that's one way of checking. So I don't know if that's staff need to take more comment.
I can certainly speak to that. Yeah, it has been brought to our attention by two individuals officially that their comments were not included, their verbatim comments were not included, and certainly we've worked with a consultant to trace back what could have happened to those comments. We've since, again, working with the consultant and the survey company, have found the comments, and we realized there were a number of, if you recall, on the survey, the very last question allowed for folks to provide additional comments on a separate sheet of paper. And in some instances, folks did take us up on that offer, but they provided their private information. And the whole point of the survey was to make it anonymous. So those letters were not lost. They were just put aside. Unfortunately, they were not recorded with the current version of the survey results that's on the website today. We have since identified that issue, and we will be providing an updated version which will include those letter comments verbatim as they are. We'll certainly take out any personal information with respect to the authors of those letters as well as the address, but they will certainly be part of the public record.
Thank you for the update. And just one last thing, if any other members of this council actually have letters from the community with respect to concerns, please forward along to other members of this council so we're aware of what's going on. Otherwise, and to staff too as a mayor. Otherwise, you know, here we are sitting in a meeting, we get conflicting stories, and you know, I'd like to have the information in front of me. But at this point, I can't support the motion.
Councillor Coulson.
Thank you for that segue. I'm staring at an email from June 5th, sent to district@lantzville.ca regarding the OCP Review Community-Wide Survey. It says, to council, staff, and OCP Select Committee. And then they go into their concerns about they completed the survey, sent it in ahead of time, results were not included, and so forth. So the comment was made, you know, council sending out correspondence that they've received. So this particular individual sent this to me because they were concerned because it did not get distributed through the proper channels. So when you send it to district@lantzville.ca and it's addressed to council, staff, and the OCP Select Committee, I would hope that whoever's monitoring district@lantzville.ca would push the forward button. That didn't happen. And that's an example of where the optics of this process go sideways. So we're having this debate, we're undermining things because, you know, select councillors received emails. It was sent to all of council and it didn't get distributed. Very troublesome.
Councillor Copeland.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to take a step back here. I fully support pursuing, finding out what went wrong for those individuals who have come forward and said my comments were support it or verbatim. But I don't want this to be seen as tainting or painting the overall picture as bad. I've been involved in dozens of OCP reviews in my career, both as a public servant and as a private individual, and this has been an excellent process. The community's been fully engaged. The 2 workshops were a pleasure to be at. People were upbeat and positive and speaking their mind, and they were great. The kitchen meetings that I went to, equally as good. And I think the survey is, again, exceptional. The number of responses to a survey of that detail particularly is amazing. I don't think anybody can argue that. So yes, we have some concerns and some issues that need to be addressed, but that doesn't undermine this process, and it doesn't undermine the direction that it's taking. So I just wanted to make that very clear. I would support staff addressing these questions and responding to the OCP review committee. I think that's the appropriate process, or the appropriate way to address this issue. So, Mayor, could you just read out the first part of your motion so we know what it right?
That due to concerns regarding the transparency and accountability of the OCP review process, staff and the consultant be directed to present a written report to council on the OCP review select committee addressing the following.
I'm going to make an amendment to that to remove the council part and have it go directly to committee.
Seconded by Councillor Neary. Discussion. From my standpoint, we are the ones that are going to vote on the final OCP. We are the ones that are going to take it to public hearing. We are the ones that need to have confidence with regards to the process. The reason why in my reading of it here I've included council and the OCP Review Select Committee is so that council also receives the documentation. When it comes to the standpoint of the process, there appears to be concerns about timing and dollars and that sort of thing. The changing of that can only come from council. I believe council is part of this. And I find it quite interesting with regards to the hands-off approach that appears to be coming from council when there was pretty much a council meeting at the OCP meeting. And in addition to that, council members have submitted guidance, I'm not sure if that's the right recommendation, no, that's not the right word either, suggestions with respect to what should be in the OCP. 2 representatives, I'm not sure if it went to the OCP committee or just to the consultant or the planner or otherwise. So now to kind of say hands off, to me is a change of directions for the purposes of this motion specifically. So I won't support the motion. Councillor Hayman and Councillor Colclough?
Yeah, just following up on a comment by staff with regards to the last pages not getting in the survey. This resident who provided me her document, her comments are written right on her survey, so it's not a case of they just got missed. She says they're not in there, so it's her survey, and she emailed it to them.
Okay,
so.
could you speak to the motion?
Speaking to the motion, I find it a little odd that now all of a sudden we don't want to be involved or really hear what's going on. To me, it's speaking more volumes about what's occurring here. I would think that as an elected official that's going to be voting on the OCP, and given the tight timeline we've put on our OCP committee and when this is coming back to council, which is July the 24th, is what I'm hearing, that you'd think we want to be fully involved and hear everything so that we can ensure this process is transparent and accountable. It's odd to me that we'd now be turning a blind eye because we don't want to hear it because it might impact our timeline. That to me just seems awfully odd.
Councillor Colclough.
I have to chuckle at when I think of how many times I've suggested something and I'm being told, oh, we're not following process. So this would be following process. This committee's role is to review and comment and advise. The draft OCP that comes before this council is the draft OCP as prepared by the staff and the consultants. If there is opposition to a particular point or part of it, then staff can bring forward the committee's comments. But ultimately, it's staff's report to council. And addressing Councillor Hames' comment, as I mentioned earlier, we will get a copy of that report regardless. But this is the process, this is the committee's role, is to comment and advise and bring up these issues and have them addressed. So I want to hear what the committee says, not what individuals say, not what council members say, etc. That's the process.
It's interesting. There was an email that I saw earlier this week or last week, I guess, from staff that stated that the OCP process was in fact voted on and directed by council. So I guess I'm a little bit confused as to whose process it is, but I kind of reiterate my concern with respect to being the part of the people that vote on the final one. I think the report should go to council. Any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Haim, Mayor Haim, and Councillor Paulson opposed. Motion carried. So we're back to the original motion as amended. I'll go for one more round just to check. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Opposed by Councillor Haim. Motion carried. Okay, introduction of late items. Councillor Bezalra.
Considering the late hour, I'll bring it up at a further council meeting. Thank you.
Is it something where you could provide a notice of motion?
I'll consider that. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, which moves us down to notices of motion. Hearing none. Public clarification and input period. 2 minutes, name and address for the record regarding business discussed tonight. Mr. Blau.
Did you just get the microphone from Frank?
How many microphones does Frank need?
One that works.
Okay.
Brian Love, 7075 Gillette Road. It's interesting watching this OCP review process compared with the original, happier, original OCP. I was on the steering committee, and it's the question I have, I guess, is what latitude will council have to actually fine-tune the OCP review suggestions when they receive it? That's the first question I have.
It's voted on by council. Council has full latitude.
So council can fine-tune it and make some changes at that time?
Correct.
Seems to me that would be a good way of bypassing all this hassle. The other question I have is about the upper and lower zones and water. I've asked this question before, and a number of times over the years, and I have never had an answer that has satisfied me. When Nanaimo Water supplies the upper zone, my assumption is that it is all current water meters in the Winchelsea neighborhood. What happens to the water from our wells that they are not using? Please don't tell me that Nanaimo has the right to say what we can or cannot do with that water that we are no longer sending through those meters, and can't that water be used anywhere in the district?
My understanding is that Lantzville and Nanaimo Water have to remain separate. So areas that are serviced by Nanaimo Water will not be able to use Lantzville water. So beyond that, though, there's no specific limitation lower versus new zone, let's call it. If the upper pressure zone is serviced by Nanaimo Water, my understanding is it cannot be mixed with Lantzville water in that area.
Well, couldn't that water be diverted down here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the first time I've heard that.
Okay. Further public input. Ms. Wiley, name and address for the record, please.
with why 729?
Oh, where'd the microphone go?
Is with why 7292 Harding East.
Is the microphone on and is it close enough to your mouth?
Lantzville.
There we go.
The new Cruise Plus building.
We can't discuss
Okay, no, because we didn't actually defeat it, so technically it's still at public hearing.
Can I not just ask?
No.
If you have a question that staff can answer, that is more than appropriate.
That's really stupid.
Welcome to the community charter.
Pretty
definitive. You all discussed it, the whole,
Yeah,
an hour on it.
Liz, basically what it is because the council members are here, there could be something that's said that constitutes new information. No, and I respect your no. However, at the same time, we don't want to run the risk if it's a case that for some reason council decided to proceed by not having to do another public hearing, it would put that process in jeopardy. So the easiest route, if you've got questions or comments, is to funnel them through staff, and staff basically will be the barrier, as dictated by provincial law.
And do they also give letters on people that are supposed to get letters? Put a letter into something?
Council cannot, at this stage, council themselves cannot receive new letters or new submissions or anything in relation to that problem.
No, never mind. Okay, back to water.
Okay.
Where I'm allowed to talk about water. I thought Nanaimo was only giving Lantzville water for emergency purposes.
No. The old agreement, which is 2006, 2007, roughly 2007, I guess, was a strictly emergency purposes agreement. When it comes to the standpoint of the new agreement, it would allow for some connection of existing residents as well as new development.
Okay. My next question, if I'm allowed to ask it, is who is paying, let's say somebody in Upper Lantzville wants to hook up. Are they paying for that to go from here all the way up there? Or I'm paying for it?
That has not yet been decided. Because there was no plan for how to pay for it and or how to implement it and who's to be charged. There's some guidance within the Nanaimo agreement that speaks to rates being the same or no lower than Nanaimo, but that's the limit of the direction.
And that's the new water, that's not what I am paying now, which is actually a huge amount. But what I'm paying now for my water is not going to be then changed to Nanaimo rates. If the answer is yes, the answer is why? Because I'm not going to
Let's just put it this way. When it comes to who and how much, etc., it has not yet been determined. So I can't say definitively that yes, things will go up until such time as that process is complete and council decides the direction. Is this in relation to Councillor Wiley? Is this in reference to Liz's comment?
So just to supplement what you noted about cost, there also has been some level of cost contributed by existing residents because I believe it was $430,000 was used from the Water Capital Reserve Fund to fund the interconnection header that's just been installed.
Oh.
Further input. My mic's going in and out, so.
Hi, I'm Jamie Driver, I'm 7075 Gillette Road. There were several remarks tonight made about, that speak to questions about the validity of the outcome of the OCP survey and how the results were tabulated, the data set was interpreted, etc. I'd like to ask, first of all, could you tell me please who directed the survey design to the consultant? Was that a charge from council, or was that from?
I'll ask Mr. Limshu to answer that question if I could.
Back and forth.
The survey questions were basically led and designed by the consultant group. Certainly there was some, we did use the committee for some of those questions, just to make sure that we understood, one, that it was easily understood as best as we could. There's a lot of discussion as to how detailed the question should be, but you know, it's one of those, it's a sort of a push-pull. You know, you want to get the information from folks, but if you make it too long, you know, interest will decrease, and so there's a bit of discussion around that.
Thank you. And was it also the committee that directed or advised the consultant about how to conduct the sampling of the survey?
The sampling of the survey was basically put together by the survey company. So while Lanark is the lead consultant, they did subcontract the survey component to another consultant who specializes in survey work. And so in terms of sampling, they are the ones that outline the methodology with respect to that.
Thank you. So they decided who would be sampled and under what terms? Is that correct?
The bottom line is that all residents within the district of Lantzville received a survey, and so effectively, it was at the end of the day, it was the best method, if you will, for getting the largest sample size moving forward. Typically, some spots would use a telephone survey, in which case you're only surveying or calling a small proportion of the population within the community, and then there are mathematical formulas that basically tell you how accurate it is, you know, whether it's plus or minus a certain percentage accuracy. In our case, given our population, given the number of samples received from folks, you know, we had a pretty good, actually we had an excellent response rate.
Thank you. You had an excellent response rate to the surveys which you distributed, or which the consultant distributed.
Jamie, we don't want to get into a back and forth on the survey methodology.
Well, actually, I think we do, because the points that you folks have been making today are about the validity of the results. Okay. And survey results are only as valid as the methods that went into producing them.
And as a numbers guy, I fully agree with you. While the survey methodology itself wasn't actually a topic of council discussion beyond the concern that not all the responses was included. So it wasn't directly the methodology of the survey, but more the handling of those responses.
Well, the point that's been raised tonight is whether the summary of the results are actually reflective of the wishes and beliefs of the residents of Lantzville. So I think it is important to establish whether, as Mr. Lynch says, all the residents of Lantzville were sampled.
Okay. And I fully understand that, but like I said, with regards to the item that was on the agenda tonight, it related to those responses, not to the statistical validity. So unfortunately, unless you're going to go down another path in relation to something on the agenda, I'm going to have to stop you there on that, unfortunately.
I just want to clarify one thing.
Microphone, please.
Not all the residents were sampled. There was
Yes.
only one survey per property. So it wasn't all the residents, it was just one per property.
That's not actually correct.
Okay, so
I can clarify, that's not actually how it went.
Yeah.
okay, I don't want to kind of get into a sing-song here.
Adding information.
Can it meet privately with them and add it, please?
Okay.
Thank you. Any additional public input? Okay, hearing none, can we have a motion under item number 18? Is that right? Moved by Councillor Neary, second by Councillor Colclough, with regards to closing the meeting pursuant to section 90, bracket 1, bracket A and C of the community charter. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.